Myself and the panel, and then we'll jump right into this. Good afternoon, Nevada County. This is David Carroll from the Nevada County Tech Connection. We are an initiative of the Economic Resource Council focusing on technology and manufacturing. I'm joined tonight by, in no particular order, Andrew Wilkinson from Nevada County Fiber, Jim Miller and Chris Hodge from Race Communications, and Steve Monaghan from, you're the Chief Information Officer for Nevada County, correct?
Correct.
Well, fantastic. One of the things that always gets interest here in Nevada County when we talk about tech is how fast is your connection? Do you have DSL? Do you have Comcast? The last couple of years, we've been seeing more fixed wireless options popping up. Some of us have gotten by hotspotting off of our phones for years. And I think that's partly why the advent of fiber optic broadband is so exciting. We've had a couple of speakers in the past talk about this. And what I've taken away as almost the most important aspect of this is symmetrical speed. It's no longer, you can watch a movie to your heart's content, but you can't video conference. It's no longer, you can download something relatively quickly, but you can't even send a picture to your, folks. So that's really what excites me about this new development with fiber, because a couple of years back, this wasn't really something that was widely available at all in Nevada County, even though the main trunk line goes up 49. I think that's almost the cruelest joke about it all. It's right there. So I'd love to hear from Andrew. Is in my old neighborhood. I used to live up on Banner Mountain, and I was one of the many people in Nevada County suffering through satellite. I'd love to give Andrew an opportunity to talk a little bit about what is so powerful about having symmetrical internet instead of asymmetrical.
Sure. Well, absolutely. Well, thank you for inviting me along this evening. It's great to be sitting along here with the team from Race, who are doing a great job in building out vast quantities of fiber optic, and Steve, who's been a big proponent of improving and understanding the economic benefits from fiber optic. My own personal story is I spent 20 years at Hewlett-Packard, and I spent a lot of the time telecommuting, as you might imagine. Initially, one of my focuses was getting DSL turned on, and that was probably 10 or 12 years ago. And that took a lot of lobbying with AT&T, and we finally got that working, and that seemed great. But over time, that's dwindled. And I'm really probably a poster child for why this is important. I have a college student, a high school student, and my wife is teaching. And so bandwidth, and of course, everyone wants to play games as well. And so we have real gymnastics with bandwidth. And I literally got to the decision and thinking that we have two options. We either up sticks and move to get bandwidth, or I go fix the issue for our community. And so when you talk about this symmetric bandwidth, to me, it's a new feature of the 21st century. I mean, we've been around the internet. It's been, going for the past 15 or 20 years in sort of meaningful way in society. But what's coming down the pipe in terms of a bandwidth and low latency, we absolutely have to have high bandwidth. Symmetrical is preferable. I think we shouldn't be limited by our downstream versus upstream, and latency is going to be a key phenomena for us. And so that's really why, after working with the team at Spiral, the tail end of that as it got handed over to Race, I also did some consulting up in Tahoe. And I finally thought, wait a second, what am I doing? Why don't I just do this? And so some people might call it stupid enough to start, but persistent enough to finish. And I'm super pleased that we do have it up actually functional. Now working on my second and third connections, I've identified up to connection number 9. And boy, the rest of the 16, and we'll probably have to go way more than that because people are going to be upset. So for me, the need has never been greater. And it's definitely difficult with COVID, but again, it just amplifies the need in this county where we need a level playing field. So, that's kind of my story about what got me going, and and why, you know, the symmetrical bandwidth and low latency is going to be critically important. And to do it once, you know, I want to build it right, and this is going to be, you know, a network that'll be, you know, held up as a model for the next, I don't know, however long you want to think about.
That's awesome. I'd like to pivot down to Steve there and talk a little bit about, from the county perspective, of how did the county come around to kind of really embracing that fiber is the future, to directly quote Chris from when I talked to him a couple weeks ago.
I think that, you know, the county has been focusing on promoting broadband for many, many years and working through partnerships. And we really partnered with the Economic Resource Council for, you know, many, many years and trying to advocate for broadband. And then in this last year, we really, you know, started looking at what can we do to be more engaged and to really promote it. You know, before, like with the spiral internet, we really advocated. We went down, I don't know how many times I drove to San Francisco to advocate with the CPUC and commissioners' offices to get that grant approved for them with board members and other county staff. And even the last time with Race, when they got transferred over to Race, which was a great thing. So we're now moving into being a little more proactive. Last year, we started a new local broadband grant program funded locally. So we no longer are reliant on just state money or federal grant monies to try to be a catalyst. And one of our recipients is Andrew in our first round to help him get his project going. So, you know, fiber really is the future. It is where we want to go. And we're really interested in, I'm always concerned with equity. How are we keeping pace with our neighbor communities that we compete with for not only jobs and stores and businesses, but for families, you know, and having good broadband, having that fiber infrastructure will keep us on pace. Because really in the last 15 years, the urban areas and the suburban areas have been moving forward, and we really haven't been moving forward. We haven't done projects that have really increased our bandwidth, our capacity in over a decade at least, you know, decade and a half.
It's just awesome to see the support and the fact that the county recognizes this is what needs to happen. It's no longer just playing the waiting game. Now, we've got with us Chris and Jim from Race Communications, and I wanted kind of the full spectrum of projects currently going on to be represented. So we've got Andrew with a smaller project up on banner. Now, the guys from Race, and I'm gonna go ahead and share this map, have a whole lot more on their mind. As you can see, there's a number of areas by color, and that's a whole lot of the county. It's admittedly not, you know, the Highway 20 corridor up North Bloomfield and other areas, but that covers a significant portion. Now, I'd love to hear Steve listed a little bit on how those areas were chosen for grant funding, and then we'll get into the weeds of what's connected and what's coming up.
Well, I'll give a little background, but I think Jim from Race could probably talk more because they do this in multiple communities. But to apply for grant funding, there's criteria from the state of California, even at the federal level, if you're going for federal money. And they categorize areas as either served, underserved, which means you have some type of service, but it doesn't meet the standard, whatever that current standard is from the state or the feds, or you have unserved, which means people can't get anything at all. It's very challenging in our topology with big trees and mountains and valleys and depressions and hills. and with fixed wireless providers to find large pockets of unserved. I mean, we have maps, but they're not very reliable. So when they applied for that grant under the Bright Fiber project, they looked for areas that had the worst service, and you start off with the federal maps and the state maps, and these are usually self-reporting from the providers. And then they do ground surveys and talk to customers and go door to door and try to verify those areas. And then they apply for a grant for those areas. That's for grant funded projects. But I think Jim could probably talk more since they do so many of these.
Sorry, I was on mute. Hi, guys. Just to give you a little introduction to RACE, and thank you, Steve, as well. RACE was founded in '94, and our focus as we moved into the fiber optic market in the early 2000s was to focus on markets that were unserved and underserved, as Steve just defined. We feel that even living in rural areas, you should still have the quality internet that the urban areas have. And so back in 2009, 2010, we started looking into federal and state programs and seeing how we could get assistance to build into these rural areas, because the obstacle in a rural area is the density isn't there like in an urban area. So it does have a larger CapEx cost to build. And obviously businesses have to have a return. And so we looked at who can we partner with on this. And we looked at the federal level, and it wasn't really set up for what we needed in California. So then we were introduced to the PUC and the CSF program that they had. And like Steve had mentioned, they have requirements and they have maps that are available that will show the areas in the state that are underserved or unserved. And from there, we work with community members, and it takes a true partnership to make this come about. And with Nevada County, we've had a great relationship with them after taking over the Bright Fiber project and bringing it back to the PUC for final approval. Without that type of partnership, these types of projects cannot move forward, because the PUC does need to see that the community is involved, and not only do they need it because it's listed as underserved, but they want to see that the community wants it and there is a demand. So having that extra support and that partnership with the county and with local city government definitely helps companies like ours and like Andrew's advance into these areas. The incumbents, the AT&Ts and Frontier and Verizons of the world have been there for years, but their focus on building and increasing their infrastructure is mainly in the urban areas. That's where companies like Andrew's and ours have, over the last 5 to 6 years, have started expanding into these rural areas. Right now, RACE's footprint goes from San Diego up the 395 corridor, all through Monaghan County, which is one of the most connected counties right now in the state, up to Nevada County. So we're very proud of where our network is and excited to be in Grass Valley. The hard work's done. We've got our POP built, and I'll let Chris speak to it, but we started releasing zones and started hooking up customers just last month. So now the exciting part begins, as people get to change their lives and get the experience of being connected.
Well, and that's what everyone wants to know. It's what's getting turned on, what's coming next. So turn it over to you, Chris.
Yeah, thanks everybody. And so yeah, I'll kind of talk about what's going on in Grass Valley, like you were saying. I'm gonna share my screen. Oh. Or if you want to share that map again, David.
Sure.
It said I couldn't share. You blocked me. So our first zone, which is that north one up there, that is fully released. We are taking orders. We're installing businesses and residentials in that light blue area up to the north. As of, I want to say 2 weeks ago, we actually started taking orders on the one just south of it, that red color right there. So, which is probably, I want to say, one of our most dense and populated areas. So we're really excited about that. I don't know. I couldn't tell you guys which one's next. So if you go on our website, they are numbered 1, 2, 3. It doesn't mean we are going in order of how it was counted. But yeah, we are extremely excited about, especially the businesses. Like Jim said, I'm the business rep for Race Communications. So to kind of see what some of these businesses have been going through with the choices they have right now. People have shown me speed test at 3 down and maybe half a meg up, trying to work, and it's impossible. So it's great to see that with broadband things can change, and these businesses can flourish because just access to the internet changes everything.
Now, kind of backtrack a little bit. You said that this red area is one of the more populated areas.
Mm-hmm.
What was kind of the calculus behind that? It definitely seems to be the theme. Most of these areas have there's some subdivisions down in the Alta Sierra,
Mm-hmm.
South County area. You're looking pretty much at Cedar. It's the Cedar Ridge area on 174. Was there much weight given to an area that's underserved, that's more populated versus underserved and lower populated?
So I'll go ahead and take on that real quick, Chris. So it gets complicated. The grants aren't perfect. It is a government program. The state of California utilizes some of the federal guidelines, and they base it off of census block groups. And when I say it's not perfect, where it's not perfect is if one home within a census block group is considered served, then by state standards and federal standards, the whole block is considered served.
Mm.
So that means one house on a corner of a block can be considered served, and you 5 miles down the road or 10 miles down the road over here on the other side won't be able to get the grant because of that. Now, RACE's goal when we come into a community, the grants are anchor. The grant gets us established in the community, and then once our grant build is complete, that's where RACE builds out on their own funds into other areas.
That actually was one of the questions people had inquiring about the public-private partnership, and at what point does the private continue to build out beyond the public investment? So you're pretty much viewing it as this gets you in, and then the next build is going to be more demand-based, or what's going to be the criteria for looking beyond this grant zone?
So the next build becomes a business model. We have to take in all the considerations of the area, the cost to build in the areas, the density of the areas, the demand. 2021, we'll get more into the details of those areas that we're looking to expand as we complete this project. The grant is a law, it is a resolution, and so we have an obligation to complete it first before we build on into it.
Very cool.
David, a little bit to build on what Jim was saying, and the census block, is really designed, and it makes a lot of sense in a suburban or an urban area where there's higher density and the census blocks are smaller. They're meant to be manageable. But in sparsely populated rural areas, we have very large census blocks. So like what Jim said, it could be multiple blocks, hundreds of acres in a census block in Nevada County, where one person up on a hill can get a fixed wireless signal, and that whole census block is then labeled as served. And there could be, 50 other homes in that census block that aren't served. And that's part of the challenges. Also, when you look at that map of the current project, that was much larger. The Bright Fiber project was probably 1,000 homes larger than that. And through the grant vetting process, there were challenges to areas of, this area is served by this provider, and the providers would challenge that. You had Comcast, you had Smarter Broadband, you had Colfax Net. They were trying to protect their customer base in their areas, and it shrank the project size down by about 1,000 homes. And then in the community, we heard a lot of people who said, well, I was in the project area, but now I'm not. Well, no fault of RACE, no fault of Spiral Internet. It was through that CPUC vetting process of the grant.
So I just like to,
yeah.
Dave, I was going to add on to that as well, just to share some light about how the state regards what a served speed is. And until kind of recently that they were believing that 6 megabits down and 1 up constitute as being a served speed, and that's per household, not per individual. And I think everyone widely understands now that that is just woefully inadequate. Now the numbers are moving up. I mean, the state is now looking at some higher specifications, but if you actually redrew the state map and said, okay, well, let's think about 100 megabits per household being served, it would actually paint an even dire picture. So, it's great that they've made progress, but I think, the standards are starting to improve, and I think they've got a long way to go to get to what we really need to be competitive in today's world.
Yeah, I would circle back to you, Andrew, and particularly about the whole idea of if one house is served, that block is considered served. And I mean, up there on Banner, there were a couple houses with service, but the rest of us couldn't get it. So now you got your grant process through a similar process as Bright Fiber, correct? It's just a scale, or is
No,
this
so this was the grant that Steve Monaghan was referring to, so the county needs huge acknowledgement for being bold enough to take the opportunity to try to stimulate local businesses and people to actually get. So there was two grants actually. One was wireless, one was mine, and I think it's really brave of the county to move forward and to do that. Now, on the basis of the success I've had, I have actually applied for a state grant. It's a little more complicated this year because we've got RDOF and a lot of demand for grant monies. But I focused my grant on an area that the state had already deemed as being eligible. And of course, COVID and everything else has come to slow these things down. So I continue to push and to lobby because you would make a huge difference. My next grant application, but I put in May, is for another 50 homes, so Buckeye and down on Banner Quaker. And everyone is just so excited. Everyone keeps pestering me and asking, and I've got so much help from local businesses. People have donated equipment. People have offered me additional employee discounts to get stuff going. The community aspect that I'm starting to see, and the help and support is just overwhelming. And I think it's just because the demand is there. People are absolutely desperate. Some people moved up here and didn't realize just how bad the internet was. Some people want to move up here and can't because they just cannot manage their business or their lives. And as you know the story with AT&T, they have essentially abandoned DSL. It's an old copper technology. And if a home gets sold or disconnected, it won't come back online. And so that to me creates opportunity. And on the basis of that, I'm seeing just, massive local support up here.
That's an interesting point about AT&T that you bring up. It's a nice segue to another reader submitted question. I'm going to direct this. Steve might have insight into this. They said that they had heard that AT&T is discontinuing DSL service in the North Bloomfield corridor area. Is that a rumor, accurate?
Well, it's accurate in that on October 1, they formally discontinued signing new DSL service accounts. So you can no longer buy DSL, their legacy DSL from AT&T. What we know locally is that for years, they have not been renewing DSLs, like what Andrew said. We heard that story, dozens and dozens of times where somebody had a house, they sold it, the new people came in knowing that they could get DSL, they call AT&T and AT&T went to sign them up. So they've been practicing that for years, but formally now nationwide on October 1st, they turned it off. They want to get out of that legacy. I mean, that's 25-year-old technology. And they really want to move people to their fiber service, which we don't have up here, or to wireless. So, what a lot of people are concerned with too is the discontinuation of copper, just POTS, plain old telephone service lines. And AT&T still needs to provide that up here. So if you're being told you can't get a POTS line to your house, give me a call and we'll get our AT&T reps involved. Because I've heard that too, where people have been told they can't get a POTS line, but they still have to provide that for now. but they would like to get out of that business. They took a run at it in the state legislature with some proposed legislation, but fortunately it failed.
Now, does the fact that there's not going to be that service available anymore, does that change the landscape as far as grant areas looking ahead, if it's no longer being served, or is that still considered to be served?
I think it would fall under the underserved. And it also, Andrew made the point talking about what that definition is, and those definitions of what's served and what's underserved have changed. They've been kind of stuck at what, 25 up, 3 down, something like that as the minimum.
6-1. Yeah.
6-1.
Well, there's a difference between the federal and the state right now. This federal has a higher standard, and that is the battle in Sacramento right now, is getting all the legislators to understand that it's about the upload speeds, as you guys originally started this conversation with. Upload is extremely important nowadays, where in the past, everyone was always focused on download and only talk download speeds. DSL in a lot of the older areas, legacy areas like this, have 1 meg or less on their upload speeds. And the lobbies from AT&T and Verizon and Frontier are trying to keep that underserved area classified as, or served area, I'm sorry, classified as an upload speed of only 1 meg. Everyone else is trying to raise it to 3 meg or higher, or symmetrical, because symmetrical is where we need to be, and that would get us off the copper network. Copper has the limitation both through DSL and through the DOCSIS modems on its upload speeds. So that there is some changing in the architecture. The PUC understands and definitely supports fiber optic projects. It's getting the legislators to understand that if they're going to offer grants, that they should focus more on the fiber projects and putting it into a 25-year-old copper project, like you said.
I don't want to get too far into the weeds as far as copper, but I did have a couple questions come to me. Is there any potential for either Race or another company to take over providing DSL service in those areas that AT&T is walking away from? Or is it just obsolete technology?
It's obsolete technology. So Race is a pure fiber company. We don't have copper in our network, and not looking to put copper into our network.
If it made any sense to make money, AT&T would stay in it, and it doesn't.
Correct.
That's why they're trying to abandon it.
Yeah. And to answer the question and concern about phones, well, that's what Race actually is before an internet provider. We're a licensed facility-based CLEC in California. So our network is built to the phone standards. We offer a digital line that has a POTS handoff, and it is operated through our network, which is battery and generator backed up. So during the PSPSs, it offers the same traditional phone service with the E911 support that you would get off of a copper line.
That's an excellent segue, by the way, because the other probably most common question I got was, will I have service when the power goes out? Like so many of Nevada Countyans, I've managed to get through. I've got a 12-volt freezer, so my food stays cold. Plug the inverter in and the modem going. But you know what? Our AT&T landline, dies after a day or so. And talk a little bit about power outage redundancy. Start with Andrew. He's been quiet up there for a little bit.
Sure. So because I'm eating my own dog food, you can bet your bottom dollar that we're going to have some sizable battery backups. In fact, that's a project that's in my shop right now. I'm building out the lithium iron phosphate battery and automatic failover. I'll have a total capacity of about 13 kilowatt hours. And my goal is that I can do nothing for perhaps even a week because it will continue to work. And because I'm actually connecting, obviously, to another fiber optic service, AT&T actually does a pretty good job with their fiber services. And so I'm very confident that we will have that unstoppable internet access that everyone actually wants. And it's not only the, the PSPSs that are a problem, it's also the winter storms. Up here in the wintertime and snows, it's quite common for trees to come down, lines to break, and people to be without power, for days, perhaps even a week. And so not only do we have the automated battery backup, by the way, my whole thing is green as well. It's on a 30 kilowatt solar bank. So again, being environmentally conscious, I'm really pleased that I've been able to partner with a local neighbor who's got a very large solar array for green power and with the battery backup. So it is definitely high on my list of things to go do is the battery backup. But I also want to comment is AT&T, and I think this is down to the county really pushing. They have been better about getting generators out for power outages, but it's a sad fact that they're just not prepared to spend the money. Most of the time it goes out really soon because the batteries are just worn out. They have lead acid batteries in these remote terminals, and they just don't want to spend the money. And I think that's a real shame, because the hardships on people who used to believe that copper POTS line was indestructible, and they're now realizing that's not the case because it's passing over a fiber optic, and once that connection, that remote terminal runs out of power, their POTS line is dead in the water as well. So it's a huge issue for people up here, and one that I'm definitely building out.
I'm glad you mentioned the snow too. As a former Banner Mountain resident, yeah, there'd be days where you wouldn't have power all week.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be out there with a broom on a ladder pushing snow off the HughesNet satellite dish there. I don't miss those days.
Yeah, I don't know myself. So
let's spin down to Jim or Chris and get the power outage story from Race.
So yeah, we do not go down. We have UPSs and everything else like that, just in case something were to happen. I was actually in Grass Valley, was it 3 weeks ago when you guys went through a 2-day PSPS? Not a single one of our customers went down. We had power and everything else like that. I live in an area where we got PSPS last year. I want to say like 6 or 7 different times, and I started my generator and ran my extension cords through my bathroom window to my router, my fridge, and my wife's hair dryer. That was the only thing that needed to be turned on. Race never went down. As long as we have, as long as the equipment has power, we're up. And then we also, if you do get a phone line with us, we provide a small UPS to our router that keeps that port open for the phone. Plug an analog phone into it, you can make a phone call. So
that's just awesome, and really comes down to, as I'm gonna quote Chris once again, fiber's the future. That's a whole lot better than relying on copper and lead acid batteries.
right.
Yeah, absolutely is. And as Andrew mentioned, how he can run his off of solar, that's the advantage of fiber optics. There's a lot less electronics out in the field than in a traditional copper network. So it does make it much easier and much more efficient for us to maintain our networks during power outages.
Very cool. Now, one of the questions that popped up was the question of above ground versus underground, and I think there's a lot of debate about which is better for everything in general. Which side do you guys fall on? Where's the gear? Where's that fiber optic cable going?
I can take a stab at it, Chris, to start out, and then I'll lead it off to you. But there is not a perfect answer to that question, because both underground and overhead have capabilities of getting damaged. You have underground, as Steve just started the conversation, that there was a backhoe that dug through fiber recently up in the area. That's common. People dig all the time thinking that there's nothing there, and they'll hit it. You have animals that can get into the conduits and damage that. Overhead is acceptable to damage as well. So what do you do as an operator? You have diversified routes, and that's what Race builds in. So we have diversified paths once the network's complete, and that means north and south. So if path to the south gets damaged, the equipment automatically switches over, and the customer never knows it, but our traffic flows the other direction. Race has a very large network built throughout the state. We're in multiple data centers, but in California, your 2 largest data centers are in and 2 in Paul in San Francisco, and 1 Wilshire in Los Angeles. We have 3 separate fiber networks that span the state in different areas, basically the coast, Central Valley, and then the high desert region, to connect those data centers. So if we have a fiber cut, whether it's overground or under it, it won't matter because that traffic will reroute to the
Well, Andrew, what about up on Banner there? Are you going underground because of the snow, or?
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't know, about 10 years ago, I put a mile of PG&E and that went underground. And again, the reason for that was that I realized if we had a power interruption during the winter, I'd probably be the last person to get fixed. So that drove my decision to go underground. And, I think, Race's comments are that redundancy is by far the best medicine for this kind of topic, because he's exactly right. You have lines break in the air, you can have them dug up underground. They all have a vulnerability. I think where we are up in Banner Mountain here is that underground is a better long-term answer for us. And I'm doing a couple of things to help owners avoid that situation where we have a dig up. So all of the conduits will be GPSed. Everyone will have a map. They'll be marked. There are obviously agencies, dig alerts, etc., to try to avoid the dig ups. Personally, I really don't want to be trying to find a boom truck when it's wintertime and the snow's coming down. I'd sooner be tucked up at home. So that's kind of driven my decisions. And it's something I'm more familiar with underground construction. I'm a farm boy from England, and I'm very used to working in the dirt and underground. So, that's what I'm doing up here. But as I say, it doesn't rule it out. I mean, I think the most important thing is to think about what's our objective, and that's to bring high-speed, affordable internet to people. And I certainly don't entertain these philosophical debates about, which is the right answer. The right answer is getting people broadband, and we need to do it in the way that makes the most sense from a financial and from a time perspective. And so there are some certain places when aerial is a very, very good answer, and there are certain places where underground, is a better answer. It's all about let's get people connected.
Fantastic. Now, I want to rotate down there to, I think Steve might be the best to answer a couple specific location questions, just to answer some audience questions. We had questions about Greenhorn Road, which, looking at the race map, might be within that area, and also Duggins Road and the North Bloomfield area.
So let's talk about Duggins Road. If that's the road I'm thinking of, it's down off Lime Kiln, kind of in southwest county.
Mm-hmm.
And the amazing thing about Duggins Road is that middle mile project that we had come in like 10 years ago and is now the vast network middle mile fiber project, goes down Duggins Road. It actually comes up from Bear River High School from 49 from Auburn. It comes across and then hits McCourtney and comes around into Grass Valley, goes through Grass Valley up to the Rood Center, and then cuts back over through kind of Smartsville to Colusa. So the good news about that is we had talked about the Bright Fiber project, and Spiral Internet formed a new company, and they did a press release last week, and they have a company called Spiral Fiber, and they're proposing a project in their press release that is going to cover that area. It's going to go that kind of west of 49 around Grass Valley up to Nevada City. And service that area, and they're saying they're going to break ground in the spring. So that's exciting to hear about that.
That's fantastic news.
That's Duggins Road. I think the Greenhorn is in the race area, and then North Bloomfield would be part of this Spiral Fiber because they're going to wrap around Nevada City. They're not going to go across the highway up to where Andrew's project is, but they're going to wrap around Nevada City and do that kind of Summit Hill area in Bloomfield, I believe. So
that's just great news. And I saw that news release last week and just about smacked myself for the timing. It was would have loved to get him in on this as well, but didn't quite happen. Well, real glad to be able to give those answers to some viewers then. Good news. Now, let's see. We've talked about a lot of what people wanted to hear about. What I'd like to also flesh out a little bit more is circle back to Andrew and talk a little bit about what was the process like to do a smaller project like you're doing? Because however it goes about, there's always going to be some neighborhoods left out. And a small project like what you did is going to fill a lot of those gaps. So would you encourage someone thinking about doing this to get into the game?
Well, so yeah, absolutely. So I have a particularly unusual background from the farm, my civil engineering world, 20 years in Hewlett Packard networking. So, perhaps there's not too many people like me, but here's what I'm really wanting to be able to do. I certainly can't cover the whole of Nevada County, let alone, anywhere else. But what I can do is actually share with people what I've figured out. And I want to put together like a cookbook to help community-centric activities to go do this. Because I need to be careful. Let me just think very carefully about this. It certainly isn't simple. I don't want to say this is a simple subject, but I think from my background in the corporate world about productizing, I could actually make this relatively plug and play for a group that was motivated. Now, I'm not talking about people that just want to talk about it. I'm talking about people that are keen to go do something. Some guys who are perhaps general contractors or people who are, into construction or have done projects. Now, there are certain aspects of this that are pretty specialized. So not everyone else is going to have a Fujikura splicer. Not everyone has the ability to do drilling or go under roads. But, the productizing of a small data center, the way to get these things from, how to put it together, and then to be able to support this with some specialized services, could be a very compelling answer for the groups, because I keep coming into groups of people that say, well, will you go there? And the chances are probably not. But you know what? I could help and educate people to be able to do more of this themselves. And I think that having gone through the painful process of learning about this, doing an immense amount of studying, I built some incredible relationships with manufacturers, and I really have gone out and chosen what I think is world class. I'm now in a much better place to be able to do that. I'm not ready to do that yet because I'm still building this out to a proof point that actually people can come and see and they can understand, and I will be able to sort of have a moment of repose and to be able to try to put sort of a playbook together. But to me, that would be one of the next logical steps for me, is to show those groups, because I think I'm rural here, but trust me, there are people who are even more rural than I am. And I think that's what we got to remember, is that Nevada County, when you go from the most rural to the most urban parts, looks very different. And so there's going to be pockets out there that they might be a mile from somewhere. Well, if I have the equipment available to be able to help to do some of the heavy lifting, and they've got the will to organize neighbors, to figure out, a funding model, to be able to make this thing work, perhaps we can have some kind of, cooperation between other companies from the technology or the support side. I think there's a lot we can do. And one of the visions that I have for this is that Nevada County Fiber could become a community-owned resource. It goes to the NID or to the Briar Patch model, where it's run by the community for the benefit of the community. And I think there's some great success stories out there about how they're able to be able to turn it into a service that works for the community. I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. I'm sort of retired early from the corporate world. I do this because I love it. I get up every morning. I'm excited about what I go do, and I want to be able to keep pushing this ahead. And I don't know whether it'll be 5 years or 10 years before we can sort of get this into more of a community-owned model. But I would like to stimulate other groups to be able to say, we can do this. We can make this happen. And perhaps, we have a collective that starts to fill in some of these less accessible areas, because I think that sweat equity, the ability to go do things ourselves, might start to do that. And Steve, I'd love to sort of see the after effects about how it gets more properties developed out in the rural areas that have not been developed because fiber optics there, or encourages, you know, people to move and to bring businesses, especially in the sort of the digital worker age, out into these rural areas. I mean, you know, what could be a better place than to wake up in the morning and to look out at the forest and be connected as if you were sitting in the middle of South Korea in terms of, you know, internet capability. So I think there's a lot we can do to try to take what I've learned and to push it out and to make it available to groups that are motivated to want to do something.
Awesome. And gives a nice opportunity to talk a little bit about the Ridge. Now, most of the projects and all the maps we've seen talked about so far are all on the south side of the Yuba River. Love to hear from Steve what, if any, ideas, plans, thoughts as far as bringing some of this to northern Nevada County is.
Well, our strategy, we did a new broadband strategic plan. We worked with the Sierra Business Council, who we hired to write that for us. And the Board of Supervisors adopted that last year. And then we implemented our grant projects. So exactly what Andrew was talking about is we love race communication and the big projects like Spiral Fiber are proposing, but we know there's going to be lots and lots of pockets that are going to need other solutions. And the Ridge is kind of like that. So that's why we started our grant program, to be able to get those motivated neighbors to get together with somebody really smart like Andrew. There's another model somebody did with a wireless network for like 20 homes. And they did it really affordable. They tapped into that middle mile vast project. And we're really looking for those cookbooks and best practices where other neighborhoods could get together, whether they're a road association, a little small HOA, Firewise community, you know, anything that has the neighbors communicating and getting together, that we can help be a catalyst and help them take on these projects themselves. And there's other funding models that we're looking at too. There's things like the PACE, you know, how you can get solar finance for your home. You know, there's programs for private road associations where they can tax themselves to have their roads maintained. And there's some other models that we're looking at. Is there a way that we could help those neighbors, those little pockets that aren't going to be picked up by anybody else, organize and solve this problem?
Fantastic. Now, one of the things that got mentioned is affordability. And as a former hotspotter overpaying for unlimited data, when I checked out the basic pricing that Race is offering, my jaw just about hit the floor for what's available. I'd love to hear you guys talk a little bit about how you're able to bring such service at such speed or at such cost. Either Chris.
Chris, you want to take this one?
Yeah, sorry, I was trying to get off mute and it was muted on my mic, but not muted on the thing. So, so for Nevada County or for Grass Valley, we do have that set pricing that was done with the grant with Bright Fiber. So 119 is your symmetrical gig. So 1 gig up, 1 gig down, of course, including your router. And then for our businesses, 159 for a gig, which, like you said, extremely affordable in comparison to like what I said, what I've heard from customers that have already signed up with Race Communications. At least on the business side, they're paying. I've talked to people that are paying thousands of dollars for, you know, other companies that are out there, or they're paying, you know, what they're paying. They're getting 3x1 or 6x1. So it's, you know, it helps us that we do get grant money to come in there. But yes, you know, it is, some of it is funded by Race Communications. But yeah, that's, like I said, to bring that price down, that those grants do help out to bring that out there. And I know Andrew has brought it up. Just bringing fiber to people at a affordable price is what the goal is. So something that we've always stuck behind.
That's been our mission from day one. The grants aren't 100%. They cover, the state grant covers 60% of our infrastructure costs by But by offsetting our infrastructure build like that, it then allows us to come in with a business model that we can come in with a very affordable price for that gig product. And with these grants, it does guarantee it for the first 2 years that it'll stay at that price. And these are no contract type of deals. So no installation costs, no contract, no term, no data caps, anything like that. They can come in. If they doubt it, they can try it for a month and leave us. But we've never had that happen. They stay once they get fiber. Very hard when people have to move out of the area and we hear them begging and pleading us, can you come to my new town, please?
Well, this has just been awesome. I think we addressed a lot of the questions I had submitted to me. We got more questions submitted in advance than any other Tectonic Tuesday we've ever done. So the interest is out there. Sounds like the fiber is going to be out there soon too, if it's not already in your neighborhood. Wanted to get a few thoughts from Steve on. We talked a lot about what the future is looking like. What sense do you have looking down the line of like when will all of Nevada County have low latency, high speed internet? Any real sense on that, or is this kind of just a moonshot question I'm asking?
I think it is a moonshot. That's a good question, and it really depends a lot on the folks that are on the call here with me and their business models and being able to expand. And a lot of it comes down to the capital and the grants that are available. And we, as the county, we are looking at models that might be able to help us accelerate that. But that's the problem. If it was affordable and cost effective for companies to build fiber to every home in Nevada County, we would have had that by now. So what we have to do is be really creative. So seeing what Andrew's doing, seeing what Race is doing, seeing what Spiral Fiber's proposing is really exciting. And I know our board of supervisors is really engaged on this. You know, we've been talking about it for years, but the pressure just keeps going up and up and up as more of our lives, from healthcare to education to economic development, all is driven by broadband now. And we see our housing market is just out of this world hot right now. You know, houses go on the market and they're sold in like the same day with multiple offers over selling price. That's what's happening in our residential market right now. And if we want to be able to attract families, so we have quality families and we have the right enrollment in our schools, so our schools can be good, so that we have economic development, so that we have paved roads and fixed potholes and all the other things that we want for quality of life, we need to offer that broadband. So it's a high priority. I know I didn't really give you a timeline, but I'm hoping before I retire that we will solve this problem.
That's a good goal.
Yeah.
I think Steve, the past 18 months, there's been a terrific change in just the feeling of us being able to meet those goals. And I think it's destiny to the work that you and the ERC and many people who've been advocating for this for a lot of years. And I think you're starting to see, you know, the reality of it. And I've tried to sort of basically focus in on not talking about what I'm doing, but showing people. And I think that's what you're now starting to see, is more people seeing real tangible evidence of, you know, broadband, to the point where no one's going to talk about it anymore because it'll be like water. It's like a common thing that we all have. And we've been starved of it for such a long time that, you know, that day when, you know, we have the county covered will be quite something.
That is an awesome last thought here. Do want to ask if anyone has any other things they want to say to the county while we got you. But Andrew summed it up better than I could have.
I think we're all in the same model. I mean, it's been years of hard work, and the coming year is going to definitely show all of the county's work and support what they've been doing to companies like ourselves, like Andrews. I know Race right now, with our POP being lit up and us being able to build our POP is our point of presence. It's the brain of our operation here in Grass Valley as well as Nevada County. With that completed, that allowed us to start opening up zone 1 and 2. By the end of this year, that'll put us in front of 1,200 homes and businesses. Total grant was 2,000. That'll be completed by second quarter of next year, and see some exciting stuff coming from RACE as well in Q1 of next year with what our plans are for Grass Valley.
Any last thoughts, Steve?
It's just exciting. It's like what Jim said, the last 18 months and what Andrew said have been really exciting. You know, the county is really committed to this. We're doing everything we can to help these creative companies connect homes. We did the grant program. We just did another grant program with $1 million of our CARES Act funding, which was the COVID stimulus money. And that went to RACE to accelerate 500 connections by the end of December this year. So those school kids in those areas can do online school. That's a big problem with the superintendent of schools tells us. You know, these kids are doing online classes and they don't have the bandwidth. And we're going to do another round. We're going to launch, hopefully later this month, 1st of December, our second round of local broadband grants. And we're looking at some other creative things around environmental impact reports that we could do that would help these providers get through that kind of bureaucratic red tape quicker and easier. So we're committed to helping all these local providers get the job done. So
Well, that's just fantastic news. We've just had a great time talking with you folks tonight. I want to thank Andrew from Nevada County Fiber, Jim and Chris from Race Communications, and Steve from the county for joining me tonight and giving everyone some, I think, really good news. We've done a couple talks like this on fiber before, and they've never ended with me being able to say, and there are, you know, plenty of people currently hooked up. So thanks for giving me something positive to talk about, guys. Can't thank you enough for joining me. I'm David Carroll for the Nevada County Tech Connection. Thanks so much and have a wonderful night.
Great. Thank you, guys. Thanks for inviting us.
Thanks, everybody.